Or I guess
Or
your
my
parents'
parents'
house.
house, correct.
And what was going on at your parents' house? Were your parents there the entire time?
No, they showed up towards the end of the evening, right as we were about to leave. And we were just hanging out, listening to music, you know,
Were people having
playing
some drinks?
cards. Mm-hmm.
And do you remember anything specific about kind of what Paul and Clay were doing? What was their mood and atmosphere when they were at your house?
Just loose and, you know, having a good time. I don't, you know, just having fun.
And you said that your parents showed up at some point, is that right?
Correct.
And then what happened after that?
So they showed up and they actually encouraged us. You know, they were like, "You guys should just hang out here because we're, you know, having a great time. There's no need to leave." But we figured we would go out and, you know, change the scenery, maybe go meet up with some other people. So we went to Midtown, called Ubers, and went to Midtown.
Do you remember where you went first when you got to the Midtown area?
I believe we went straight to Kung Fu Saloon.
Had you ever been there before?
No, that was my first time.
Can you describe Kung Fu Saloon?
It has arcade games going around the side, and it was not very crowded, I don't think, when we were there.
The bar itself has arcade games inside of it.
Correct.
It's somewhat different than most bars, is that right?
Yes, it's very different.
How long did y'all stay there?
It's tough to say. I mean, you know, obviously the whole night is kind of a blur for me, but maybe an hour, maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour and a half.
And where did you go after?
I believe we went straight to Dogwood.
And what do you remember about being at Dogwood?
So what I remember from being in Dogwood was that we were, you know, I remember going there and it was kind of like an unplanned reunion almost. You know, there was a lot of people that I hadn't seen in a long time. So my memory was just kind of going around, you know, catching up with different people and having a good time talking about whatever it may be, catching up. And then, do you want me to like keep going?
Well, so you said that it was like kind of like a reunion. Were there a bunch of other people there that had gone to BGA in the past?
Yes, there's people that had gone to BGA in the past.
And so there are people from different grades, not just your grade and your group that you went with.
Correct.
What was the mood of everybody when you were at Dogwood?
Like, I mean, like what you'd expect at a reunion, you know, just like everyone was kind of cheerful, happy, good to see you, what are you up to, you know?
Which obviously something happened that night, but prior to anyone leaving Dogwood, was there anything that stood out to you about that night out of the ordinary?
No.
And can you describe when you left Dogwood? And I want to ask you really specifically about in December 2019, so right after this happened, what did you remember happening when you left Dogwood?
Yeah, so up until, you know, I'd been shown any photos or anything like that, my memory was that I actually thought I walked out after the crowd had left. And I thought I walked out with my friend Campbell and we saw, you know, an altercation. We saw pushing and shoving, so we ran down trying to, you know, help our friends out if they were involved or break it up or do whatever we could. And then I kind of remember like someone getting knocked over maybe, and then like looking around, you know, just making sure everyone's okay, and then kind of running across the street after the you know, attackers. And then I came across the street, or then I walked back to my friends. You know, we didn't realize anything serious had happened. We were just kind of, you know, walking back like, oh, that was pretty crazy. And then we get over across the street and, you know, it's very serious all of a sudden.
So did you see anything happen to Paul or Clay?
No.
And in 2019, right after this happened, your memory was that the scuffle was already underway when you came outside.
Correct.
Did you remember that you had been hit during that scuffle?
No.
And you said that you didn't see anything happen with Paul or Clay. What what did you see, and how did you find out about what happened to Clay?
Well, I guess obviously there was commotion, and I heard, just people saying, oh, these people have been stabbed, your friends have been stabbed, whatever. But I didn't really see, or it didn't register, I guess, maybe until I saw one of them on the stretcher. I might have seen Clay on the ground, and I think I saw Paul on the stretcher. And that's when I was like, whoa.
When you first heard somebody say that somebody's been stabbed, what did you think that meant?
I don't know. It's, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really think it was anything serious. Again, it seemed very like, what do you mean someone's stabbed? Like, no way, someone's stabbed right now. Like, it was surreal, I guess is the word I would use to describe it.
When did you find out what actually happened to Clay and Paul?
Oh, you mean that they had passed away or that they had been stabbed?
That they passed away because they had been stabbed.
I was on the phone with Carter Trepini in the hospital, and I think I stepped out of the waiting room, and I took the phone call, and that's when I learned that they had passed away.
Do you remember talking to Detective Beavis about a week after this happened?
Yes, I do.
And can you describe, when you talked to Detective Beavis, what had been going on during that time? I mean, kind of what state of mind were you in?
Just, again, like, you're walking in a dream, like, you're all of a sudden, coming home for Christmas break, you're seeing your friends, you're coming to town for the holidays, it's a very cheerful time, and then all of a sudden you're going to funerals, you're hanging out at the hospital, you're crying, you're comforting friends, it was like just unreal. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And then I think those interviews were right after the funerals, so it's just like, it's, you're just walking like, pinch me, what's going on.
And when Detective Beavis interviewed you, did he show you any of the video from outside or inside the bar that night?
He showed me photos, yes, and those photos like kind of proved my memory. What I thought I knew up until that point was not accurate.
And were those photos, they were still photos, is that right?
Correct.
Was that of everybody kind of standing outside the doorway?
I believe one was from the stair as we're walking down the stairs, and one was from like a street view, yes. And
so after he showed you the photos, I guess, what, if anything, did that kind of do for your memory?
I mean, it just makes you, it makes you question yourself a lot. It makes you, you're like, wait, at these memories that I thought I had, clearly they're wrong, because this is photo evidence that says they're wrong. It's kind of, it's just hard to comprehend,
Did you remember being there when Mr. Folks was hit?
No.
And after you saw that photo, you realized that you were, is that right?
Yes.
But you didn't have any independent memory of that, is that right?
Correct.
And Detective Beavis, he just showed you those still photos, is that correct?
To my memory, yeah.
When was the first time that you saw any video from the incident itself?
November of this past year.
And was that just the video from outside the bar?
Yes.
And was it a fairly short clip that you saw?
Yeah, sure.
When was it that you've ever been able to see video from inside the bar and kind of the complete video of outside the bar?
Not until the last few days.
And after seeing that video, does it make you have a clear memory of everything that happened?
No, I mean, it's by no means clear still. I mean, I guess you start to get almost like flashbacks of stuff that comes back from the night, but even then, all that I've been able to kind of remember is just standing around that long, like chest-high table, and just like kind of going from friend to friend, just kind of catching up.
Do you want to be able to remember more?
Sure, yeah. I mean, why not?
Can you describe that night? Everybody's drinking. How much did you have to drink?
I probably had a significant amount. I mean, I don't think the trauma of the incident was the only thing blurring my memory.
And can you explain what you mean by that?
I was probably significantly intoxicated.
So you think that has something to do with why you don't remember it super clearly?
Yes.
And then you said that was in addition to the trauma. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a traumatic instance, you know. I mean, it's something that has affected me long past just that night, you know. I mean, and just that initial shock of, you know, your friends have died. It's something that it's hard to shake, you know. It's hard to go out in public and feel normal. It's hard to be around people you don't know, around strangers, around, you know, you may have a conversation and you don't know what this person may do next. You know, something like it's a lasting effect.
And has that affected your ability to remember some of the details of that night?
Yeah.
Which you have seen video, is that right?
Yes.
And do you recognize yourself in that video?
Yes.
And Your Honor, I'm going to ask to show this witness what has been previously introduced as exhibit number 11 in its file folder. I believe it's 11. Mr. McCullough, do you see yourself?
Hold on, okay, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Mr. McCullough, do you see yourself in this image?
Yes.
And just for the court record, it is at 02:38 and now 15 seconds. Which you can touch your screen and your screen will make a mark. Can you just point out where you are?
The one with the back to the camera.
And who are you talking to?
My friend Campbell Parker.
Now, do you recall anything about your and Campbell's conversation?
No.
Do you see any of your other friends in the image?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's Clay leaning on the edge of the table. I think he's talking to Emma right there. I think that might be AJ right to his right. That might be Sam behind them. I think it's a little difficult to make out.
And have you just walked over on the other side of Emma?
Yes.
Which again, you've described that you remember being with your friends around a long table, talking, catching up. Was there anything else that happened inside that bar that stood out to you that night?
Not that was significant, no.
And do you know what's kind of going on right now with your friend group? Do you remember?
Not at all, no. I don't remember, but it looks like we're just talking.
Do you have any specific memory of talking to anyone outside of your friend group in the bar that night?
No, I don't.
And can you describe back then, before this happened, your personality? Was it something where you would talk to people that you didn't know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially if I was, you know, under the influence of alcohol, I would talk to anyone, you know. I would try to be friendly, try to just, you know, make friends. I don't know.
So that wouldn't have been unusual for you to talk to someone that you didn't know at all?
Not at all, no. Common, if anything. You know, maybe I'd do it more often, you know, because I already know all my friends, and so I'd go talk to other people.
I am going to fast forward just a little bit.
Just water.
Sugar, yeah, there you go.
Mr. McCullough, do you know what's happening at this point at 2:41:35?
No, I mean, it looks like we're just joking around. Paul is entertaining.
But did you remember this happening before you saw this video?
No, I did not.
And I'm gonna fast forward a little bit further. Now we're at 2:42:30. Do you remember what you're seeing yourself do in this video? And can you describe what you're doing?
It looks like I'm talking to Mr. Mosely.
Do you remember that at all?
Not at all.
And I have moved up to 2:45:43. Can you describe what you see yourself doing in this video segment?
Well, it looks like I'm talking to Mr. Mosely and one of his friends or associates. I don't know.
Do you remember this conversation at all?
Not at all.
And it appears that at some point, I guess you've kind of motioned over to Emma Yoder, which, just based off of knowing yourself, what, if anything, might you have been talking to Mr. Mosely about?
You know, he could have asked me maybe about her, and I could have just been saying, yeah, she's great, she's cool, you know, whatever.
Would you have directed him to do anything?
I don't think so.
And do you remember this event actually happening?
No.
And kind of anything about this interaction, did that stick out to you at the time at all?
Not at the moment, no.
I am now going to open Exhibit 11, file folder 10, which is the video of this staircase. And Mr. McCullough, do you see yourself in the video from the stairs?
Yes, it looks like I'm right there in the front.
And do you remember anything that's being said by anyone?
No, not at all.
Which, kind of knowing what happened when the detective is asking you about that night, if there was something, I guess, kind of pertinent, would you have told the detective about it?
Yeah, I mean, if I had remembered anything, I would have disclosed it.
Did that seem like a pretty normal event of just leaving the bar to go outside?
Yeah, absolutely.
I am now showing Exhibit 11, Folder 7. Mr. McCullough, do you see yourself in this video image?
Yeah.
And is this part of the still photos that Detective Beavis showed you at some point?
It appears to be the same, from the same camera.
And is this what you described of not realizing that the fight had not started before you were already outside before the fight started?
Yes.
And again, you said that you don't have an independent memory of this. Is that right?
Correct.
Do you see yourself in that video?
Yes. Yes, I just got shoved. And I just missed. And then I got hit.
But after this happened, you didn't actually remember getting hit. Is that right?
Correct.
Now I want to back up just a little bit. Now, right here at that moment, are you able to see yourself in the video?
Yes, you want me to touch the screen?
Yes, please.
I think.
And what are you doing right here, Mr. McCullough?
It looks like I'm trying to help my friends out after they were attacked
And then helping them out how?
by defending them.
So are you actually swinging at Mr. Mosely?
It appears so.
And do you remember that happening?
No.
Were you able to see yourself in that video, Trey?
Yes.
And what is happening to you in that video?
Well, it appears like I'm, entangled up with Mr. Mosley. I was trying to hit him. It doesn't appear like I maybe did, and then I got pushed out of frame.
And I am showing Exhibit 11, Folder 6. Fast forward to about a minute into the video. Mr. McCullough, are you able to see yourself there in that video?
Yes.
And can you press the screen and indicate where you are? And do you know who is there with you?
I believe it's David Bates.
And can you press the screen and show where you are now?
Sorry, I kind of was watching a different area. Oh, yeah, right. You want me to, right over here. We're moving away now.
And so you're over on that dogwood
Right, like over here.
of the sidewalk. Are you able to tell who's there with you?
Not exactly, no.
Do you remember seeing Paul and Clay walk across that street?
No, I don't.
And do you see yourself doing anything right now? Would you like for me to back up?
Yes, sorry. Oh yeah, so there it appears I'm kind of jogging across the street.
And is that something that you remember doing?
Kind of vaguely, yes.
And where did you go?
I kind of chased, I followed them into the parking lot or where they were getting into their vehicle.
Do you remember seeing anybody get into the vehicle?
I remember seeing 2 people get into the vehicle.
And then eventually, do you come back over to the area of the sidewalk where the Dogwood bar is?
Yes, and then I walked across the sidewalk.
When was it that you realized what happened to AJ
Oh, age? Not until, I guess maybe when we got to the hospital. I believe he was in the hospital as well. I don't know. It was a little after the fact. I didn't realize that it happened until later.
So while you're at the actual scene of where everything's happening, you don't even know what's happened to AJ.
Correct.
Which, Mr. McCullough, you identified Mr. Mosely in that video. Did you know him prior
No, I did not.
to this happening?
No.
And again, you said that you don't remember any of those conversations with him.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough. I don't have anything else.
Okay, Mr. Quillen?
Mr. McCullough, if I understand you correctly, your independent memory of the events of that day are just unreliable.
Correct.
Going back to December of 2019, how much did you weigh back then?
If I had to ballpark, maybe 170,
And how tall are you?
about 5'10" or 5'11".
5'10". And David Bates was at your house on the evening of the 20th, correct?
Correct.
And he's a really big guy, correct?
If you would like to describe him that way, yeah, he's
Well,
pretty big.
6'5" tall, isn't he?
Sure.
And he went to Christ Presbyterian as opposed to BGA.
Yes.
Now, your relationship with Emma Yoder, you were dating her as late as August of 2014, correct?
I'm not exactly sure. That was a long time ago.
Well, that would have been right before your junior year or 11th grade year.
Sounds correct.
And did the relationship terminate then, or the 11th grade?
I mean,
or
I
12th
guess
grade,
in
or?
a intimate way, but not in a friendship way, not in like a friendly way.
Okay. Well, I mean, when did you stop calling her your girlfriend?
I couldn't give you an exact time. I mean, I guess somewhere around that time period.
Okay. And she broke up with you?
I probably.
And so she goes to the University of Colorado at Boulder, and you go to the University of Denver.
Right out of high school, correct?
Okay. And were you hoping to rekindle the romance with Ms. Yoder?
Not particularly. I mean, we were still friends, and we had similar interests in the fact that we were both drawn to those schools.
Okay. Now, did you play football at Battleground Academy?
I did for 1 year,
1 year. Which year?
my senior year.
Senior year. And what position did you play?
I was like an outside linebacker.
And did you play baseball?
I did.
You were a third baseman?
I was an outfielder.
Outfield. Now, to your get together on the evening of the 20th, do you remember what time your guests arrived? Were
No,
you still sober at that point?
Yes, I was still sober. Paul was the first of my friends to arrive. It's tough to say exactly a time, but maybe anywhere from 6 to 8 p.m.
So, well, let me ask you about Mr. Beathard. Now, is it fair to say that Mr. Beathard was only lightly intoxicated? Or do you know enough to even make that evaluation?
No, I couldn't say how intoxicated he was.
So, and you don't have any memory of you and Mr. Beathard laughing at Mr. Folks, how intoxicated he was?
No.
All right, I'm going to show you a still from 235:43. .45-43 7/4 spare top camera. And I'll show you a closer one in a second, but that's you, Mr. McCullough, right there.
It appears so.
And to your right, Clayton Beathard.
I actually don't. I can't identify if that's Clay or not.
Okay. And Samuel Folks over here.
That appears to be Sam.
And Mr. Bethurn right here.
That appears to be AJ.
All right, I'm gonna go to a little tighter shot and so you can identify. Okay, I'm gonna put a WN for you right here. Is that
Sounds good.
all right? And an SF for Sam Folks over here.
Okay.
Does that look accurate to you?
It does.
Okay. All right, we'll offer this as an exhibit. Collective. Now I want to show a video starting at 2:35:43 a.m. marked as DFTID 8. Not yet. Okay. All right, it appears you're talking to Mr. Beathard, correct? And Sam Folks comes around and gives you a shove.
That does look like Sam.
And then Mr. Folks wandered, well, let me wait a second. Doing a little pushing. Then Mr. Beathard, you and Mr. Beathard laugh at Mr. Folks, how intoxicated he is. Mr. Beathard doubles over laughing. Is that a fair characterization?
Again, I have no idea what was said in that conversation, but it appears to be the person I'm talking to is laughing.
Okay, all right. We'll offer that as our next exhibit.
Number 49.
Moving on to the fight, Mr. McCullough, and you don't have any independent memory, and without pictures, you just can't say what you did or didn't do.
Correct. I don't have any independent memories.
Okay. And you don't remember a man holding Mr. Mosely in a chokehold and you hitting him at that time?
I don't remember that.
All right. Now, towards the latter part of the fight outside, do you remember David Bates grabbing you and holding you off?
No, I don't remember that.
And the Sunday after this incident, 8 days later, Sunday, December the 29th, you remember being out on the VGA campus, correct?
Correct.
And you were sober that day.
Correct.
And Detective Beavis asked you specifically if you observed inside the Dogwood Bar any interactions between Mr. Mosely and your group.
Correct. Yeah.
And you didn't say I was too drunk to remember, did you?
I'd have to listen to the exact audio recording again to tell you what I said again. I mean, it was a very busy time with a lot of trauma, a lot of grieving, a lot of things you don't want to do. And so it's tough to say exactly what I said in a conversation.
Let's play defendant ID, DFT ID 22, audio only.
Interaction between the person that was arrested for this and anyone in your group or anyone in his group.
Yeah, you want me to just tell you what I remember? 'Cause it's really, from talking to everyone else, I think mine might still be the least helpful. But
Well, that's fine. It's
yeah,
you remember it,
yeah. So I just remember, all I remember, I didn't see anything happen inside the bar. I didn't see anyone get approached.
Interaction between
That's that. We'll offer that as our next exhibit, Your Honor.
42.
Let's see. Was that DFT? Was that 22? And if I may have a moment. No, that's all we have, but we gather up that, two of them I gotta put in?
Yeah, number 41, I believe, was the video, DFT ID 8, if I'm not mistaken.
And
That should be
22.
41. 42 should be DFT ID 22, that's the audio interview. I have photo was 40. Right, photo was 40. Then he had DFT ID 8, that was the video. I thought, was that not a video? Lisa says it was a video, DFT 40, number 41. Yeah. Okay, have you concluded your cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr.
All
McCullough.
right, thank you. Anything to redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. McCullough. You may step down,
Thank
take
you.
your time, watch your step. Is the state ready to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor, there is an issue if we might approach.
Yes.
And prior to working at the Dogwood in Nashville, did you have any specialized first responder training?
Yes, I was a deputy in Kentucky for a period of time. We went through basic, self-defense techniques and basic medical life rescue classes and techniques.
Okay. I want to call your attention to December 20th, 2019 and into the early morning hours of December 21st of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Were you working on that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell the jury what you were doing for Dogwood on that day?
At that time, I was working as head of security, doing my basic duties, making sure that everybody was okay, making sure that my guys were okay. We shut down the place properly and, just normal security night.
Okay. What time does the bar close?
So the bar closes by 3 a.m. That means everybody has to be out. Typically lights are up at 2:30, and we, give a warning, tell everybody to start leaving, and then 2:45 we give a hard push and start getting everybody out to meet that 3 a.m. deadline.
Okay. And if somebody were to try to come into the bar around 2:30, 2:45, what would y'all do?
Typically, it is no reentry after 2:30. However, it's a case-by-case basis. If they speak to the door guy, such as, "Hey, man, I need to run my keys out to a friend," or they left their phone or something of that nature, access may be granted back inside the bar. But typically, after 2:30, nobody is allowed in.
And is there anything that the staff does in particular right at closing time?
Yes. Once everybody is out of the bar is secured. I do a walkthrough, make sure that nobody is, lingering in bathrooms and stuff like that. Doors are locked, and we start pulling trash cans and begin our closing duties for the night.
Did you notice anything inside the bar that night that drew your attention?
No, ma'am. My security staff is very prideful on being proactive rather than reactive. We walk around in Rome and make sure that everything is good to go, and if anything does arise, it ends quickly. That night was a very smooth night altogether. No physical altercations, no verbal altercations that got our attention whatsoever.
If you had seen something out of the ordinary inside of the bar that made you feel like things were going awry, what would you all have done?
Well, if it's a verbal altercation, then myself and or other security guards would interject, separate both parties. If it's a pretty heated argument, then we would just ask both parties to leave. Typically, our rule of thumb, if it's a verbal altercation to that point or a physical altercation, the rule is one party goes out, one exit. We hold the second party until the first party is left, and we bring the second party out and we take them out the second exit. But like I said, there was nothing of that nature that night.
Okay. So after everyone was out of the bar, did you notice anything that drew your attention?
Yes. While I was beginning my closing duties, I had heard that there was an altercation beginning outside. I remember looking out there and not really seeing much, much as in it didn't look really threatening, if you will. Looked like just like a bunch of people, pushing and shove each other. Nothing too crazy. So I just, continued on with my closing duties.
Did you think you needed to go out there and defend anybody from getting hurt?
Absolutely not. What I saw was, a bunch of people, like I said, pushing and shoving each other. There might have been a punch thrown, but there was never a point in my mind where I had hoped that somebody was able to defend themselves due to life-threatening altercation. It was nothing like that. It is not uncommon to see altercations outside once bars close, whether it be us or from another bar. Legally, we are not allowed to get involved in anything like that. However, as a human being, if there was anything that was ever life-threatening, I myself and my staff would have stopped anything that was going on.
And again, you didn't see anything that you felt like needed to be.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Did you ever see anybody with a weapon?
No.
When did you become aware that the situation actually was a very dangerous situation?
So I was upstairs, continuing my closing duties. At some point, I had heard that somebody had gotten stabbed, to which I responded and ran outside. I now know that was Dave Hangley letting one of the managers know that somebody was stabbed and to call 911. So I began to run outside. Dave Hangley was already on the ground working on, now that I know, Clay Bethard. I went over and asked Dave if he was okay, if he needed anything. And then he said, no, I'm fine. Go check on that guy over there. I looked up, and then I had seen what I now know as Paul laying in the alleyway.
Okay. And can you tell the jury how you interacted with Paul Trepini?
Yes. So once I got over there, there was a crowd of people around him, obviously his friends, trying to wake him up and stand him up and stuff like that. I physically removed a couple people in a non-malicious way, obviously. I went down. I asked him if he could tell me his name. He gave no response. I began examining him to the best of my ability. I seen obviously copious amounts of blood, at which time I lifted up his jacket and shirt and began to do a body sweep to try to find where the blood was coming from. At which point I found about an 1.5-inch laceration right here around his diaphragm area. At which time I began to apply pressure. I instructed another security guard to go get me some towels. I continued to talk to Paul, told him, hey man, it's going to be okay, I'm here with you. I instructed one of his friends to hold his head and keep talking to him. During this whole process, he began to vomit a little bit. So I had everybody roll him on his side, kind of. Once my security guard came over
Can I
with
ask you to pause there for just a moment?
Yes.
You said that you were talking to Mr. Trepini
Mm-hmm.
Before he was rolled over onto his side. Was he able to respond to you in any way or communicate with you at all?
Absolutely not. The only response that I got was that he had looked at me. Me and him were looking eye to eye. Very shallow breaths, no verbal response whatsoever. There was no real, he didn't grab up and reach for me or anything like that. He was just there, kind of lifeless.
And you said that you rolled him over on his side?
Yes, I rolled him over on his side because I didn't want him to asphyxiate on his vomit. Once my security guard grabbed the towels for me, we call it a speedball. Basically, it's usually used for gauze, but basically you make a very tight ball and you pack it into the wound and you keep packing to try to stop the bleeding or clot whatever is in there. So I tried making a speedball and I began to put it inside of Paul and his laceration. However, the towel was just too thick to make a proper speedball. So what I did was pulled it out, wrapped the towel around my hand, and I stuck my fingers inside of the wound cavity. And at that time, we rolled him back on his back. I noticed that he was still losing a lot of blood. I'm continuing to talk to him through this entire process. Hey, Paul, you're going to be okay. Stay with us. You're going to be all right. Everything's going to be okay. At which time, at some point, I should say, I took one of his legs and propped it up on my knee. I was kind of standing in a kneeling position. I had one knee up, and I propped his left leg on my left knee to try to circulate some more blood to his core. Still, like I said, no response from him. as it started to progress into the night, waiting for Metro to arrive, I don't really, I don't know the medical term, but whenever somebody passes away, they give one last breath, and it's more of a groan rather than a breath. And whenever I was looking at Paul, trying to talk to him, try to keep his, spirits up, he let out that groan, at which time I felt that he had passed away. I obviously still waited for Metro to arrive. Once they did arrive, I told one of the officers, kind of, in secret, if you will. Not really in secret, but, I didn't want to freak anybody out. I had informed one of the Metro officers that I had thought that Paul had passed away because he let out that groan and he was very flushed, and there was no more response as far as, him looking at me anymore. So.
How were Mr. Trepini's friends reacting during this time?
It is a very chaotic situation. A lot of screaming, yelling, crying, obviously, as they should. Once Metro arrived and EMS got there, obviously they took over the scene. They're all trying to console each other. It is a very, very chaotic situation. I had instructed my security guards and all other staff that was outside to get inside so we are not in the way of Metro and EMS. I do remember whenever I was walking inside, there was another individual sitting on our planters that had a laceration over his eye. But EMS was already working on him, so there was no need for me there.
And are there video cameras at Dogwood?
There are a lot of video cameras.
If I could have just 1 minute. Your Honor, those are my questions.
Okay. Cross-examination, Mr. Fuller?
No question, John.
Thank you so much, sir. You're welcome to step in.
Yes, ma'am.
This is probably a good time for us to break for lunch. We'll go ahead and let you break for lunch. And do I need to repeat the rule? That y'all know it by heart? Okay, all right.
All right.
Okay. Are there any issues that the board needs to look into over the lunch break? Any evidentiary issues that I need to research?
Not here, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. Y'all think about 45 minutes is enough time?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, as I nod my head, yes.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay, go back there, drink, back there. Good, thank you. Thank you so much. Are you doing okay? I'm doing good, yeah. You're right.
Okay, think I might as well go on and move tomorrow's docket? What do you guess?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, let's see what we still have in front of you. Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Yes, the question, the answer is yes, right?
Well, yeah. Yeah, for tomorrow, for sure.
I might as well move tomorrow's docket there,